mentioned the Lord in that song, and reminds me of when I played in Scotland a few years ago, near my hometown. And the next morning we went to get coffee, me and Ollie, the tour manager, and I'm just standing looking at this shop, like a dairy or something, whatever it was. I was daydreaming about being a child, growing up near there. And I saw this older lady and a younger guy walking out of a shop, about 3 or 4 shops up. And they didn't see me at all, but I could see them, I could hear the conversation. They're chatting away, talking about nothing in particular. And eventually, he says to her, he says, "Oh, it's lovely talking to you, Mrs. Simpkins, but I need to go. I need to study very hard today. I've got a very important exam in the morning." And she said, "Oh, no worries, David, that's fine. Off you go, son." So they said goodbye. I walked around the corner to have my coffee, and I'm sitting there. The guy walks down the street, same guy. He looks at me and he stops. He comes over and he goes, "Excuse me, sir." I said, "Yes." He said, "You wouldn't happen to be that guy, Colin here from Men at Work, would you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, I love that band. Got me through college. You like that music. Thank you very much." I said, "Oh, you're welcome." He said, "Do you mind if I sit down and I chat to you?" I said, "No, sit down." So he sat down, talking for a wee while. I said, "What do you do yourself, David?" He said, "Oh, I work with my father." I said, "What does your father do?" He said, "Oh, he's a missionary." I thought, "Oh, I've never met a missionary before, let alone the son of a missionary." I said, "A missionary?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Well, we had a church for quite a few years in Sierra Leone, in West Africa. Very strong denomination, doing very well." I said, "Oh, that's good." He said, "Yes, but then my father's health was failing, and the Lord spoke to me and said, 'Time to go back to Scotland.' So that's what we did. We're back here, we've got a church here." I said, "Oh, congratulations." He said, "Which brings me to my question for you, Mr. Hay." I said, "Oh, what's that?" He said, "Have you thought about what the Lord means in your life?" And I said, "Oh, not for quite some time, I must admit, David." He said, "Well, I would give it some serious thought, Mr. Hay, because let's face it, you've led a very decadent lifestyle." I said, "Oh." He said, "Yes. I would get your mind right before too long," he said, "with the Lord, before you get too much older." And I said, "Oh, thank you very much for that advice." I said, "We need to go now. We've got another gig to do." And I said, "I know you need to go." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You have to study very hard today because you've got a very important exam in the morning." He said, "How do you know that?" I said, "The Lord doesn't just speak to you, David."